Well, I mean, it is a Nintendo Direct. You know, there's been lots of rumors and speculation about would Nintendo have a Direct in the month of July, and this morning they announced one, but honestly, I kind of have more questions than answers when it comes to this because of the nature of the Nintendo Direct itself. This morning, Nintendo announced that a Nintendo Direct presentation will be happening tomorrow, July 31st at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, roughly a 25-minute presentation, which in and of itself sounds like good stuff, you know? But when you look at it, it's a partner showcase. And so I have lots of questions, and we're going to kind of go over what I expect to see at this showcase and then go kind of along with the bigger questions that I have about this and maybe potential areas for these questions to be answered. So a partner showcase is, of course, an event that takes place that involves primarily third-party games from their different manufacturers and their different developers that are developing for the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, if we look at the Nintendo Direct that we had initially for the Nintendo Switch 2, there were two segments in there that were primarily focused on partner games. You know, there was like a first one that had like Elden Ring and stuff, and then like a secondary one that had some more games in there. And these partners that they showed during this presentation were primarily partners that they showed, you know, when they first did the Nintendo Switch Direct, as far as the companies were concerned, your Capcoms, your Bandai Namcos and stuff like that. It definitely felt like there was a bit of a holdback when it came to like all third-party developers. Now, we have heard various rumors and potential speculation that I can pretty much say isn't necessarily unfounded rumors and speculation that a lot of third-party developers of medium to smaller size potentially do not have dev kits for the Nintendo Switch 2 quite yet. Now, that of course goes back to a report that came out before the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2 that the way Nintendo was going to handle it was that games were going to kind of come in waves for the first few months, and there weren't going to be a lot of announcements from third-party publishers initially, except for the ones that they have a good working repertoire with, much like we saw with the Nintendo Switch 1. So it's going to kind of be like a rollout situation. And when you look at those games that were announced during the first Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, I think it kind of does line up pretty well with something like that. Like, you got to imagine a lot of these companies, especially bigger companies who weren't represented within the initial Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, have a lot of things to say. A company like, well, I mean, Microsoft. We know Microsoft is working on Nintendo Switch 2 stuff. Why did they not have anything at the initial launch of the system? Of course, there are other companies out there as well, but I think the rumor, which really isn't a rumor, that dev kits aren't exactly being distributed to everyone, kind of makes this event very interesting. Because when you're asking me, well, what do you expect at this event, RGT? Because obviously, you know, I like to do predictions and stuff like that. I'm not quite sure I know what to say here. Like, I'm not quite sure I have any sort of real speculation. I guess you could do updates on stuff, you know, games that have been confirmed, maybe first looks at them, and, you know, maybe confirming some third-party stuff. But, like, I would imagine like Capcom's going to be at this like balls deep, because Capcom, you know, they had Street Fighter 2, they had Kitsune, or however you say it. But like, I was expecting Resident Evil stuff at the initial Switch 2 event. Like, I expect a lot of these companies to be porting over, and yes, they are older games and whatnot, but you got to remember, like, a lot of Nintendo fans live within the Nintendo ecosystem, and they don't really tiptoe sort of out of it. You know, they buy a Nintendo Switch or a Nintendo system in order to play first-party Nintendo games, and then they dabble in the third-party stuff. A lot of them, I shouldn't say a lot of them, but there is a portion, a pretty sizable portion, I think I can comfortably say, that just experience the first-party Nintendo stuff and don't necessarily own multiple systems and stuff like that. So I think it's interesting from that standpoint. There is a bit of mystery and excitement that comes with it when you have a third-party partner showcase. What kind of stuff is going to be there? Can we see some more really cool ports and stuff like that? So I'm still excited for this because I like to see what the Switch 2 is capable of in terms of essentially keeping up with the Joneses when it comes to other platforms. But here's the elephant in the room. What does this mean? Where is my bro? I have a lot of questions here because Nintendo first party games don't have a release date for the Switch 2. Yeah, you have Drag X Drive, which nobody's buying. Maybe some people are buying that. I'm not buying that. I know it's cheap, but I have no interest in that game. But what's up with Metroid Prime 4? That needs a release date. Kirby Air Riders, that needs a release date. Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, that needs a release date. Are there other games that are coming out? Those need release dates. And I guess you could look at it from one of two ways. And really, there's multiple ways to kind of look at it, realistically speaking. But let's look at it from the perspective of they could just do announcements on the Nintendo Today app of release dates of those games and then do an elongated trailer on YouTube or something like that. And maybe they don't do a Nintendo Direct and this is the lineup for the holiday season alongside of stuff like Pokemon and then the third party stuff that we're going to learn about tomorrow. And that's it. And then we're gearing up towards 2026. On the other side of the coin, there's still time for another Nintendo Direct. If you have Drag X Drive coming out in the month of August, you could do a first party showcase or a different, because it's not like there's going to be a lack of games. You could do a more traditional Nintendo Direct presentation in September or something like that, early September, to give some release dates for that, since Drag X Drive is an August game, and have some third-party games sprinkled in there. But I find it very interesting because we have stuff from ratings boards that, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment was rated. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond was rated. There was some information yesterday about the new Splatoon spin-off game that, gave some first details about it and kind of how it's going to work based on a ratings board, I believe it was. So many people are pegging that as a potential 2025 game. But it's when are you going to talk about these things? Not to say time is running out, because time is of the essence, and you can always do a presentation or do an information drop on your app or on social media or something like that. And we've learned that that's very powerful. And really, at the end of the day, the Nintendo Direct itself isn't necessarily what matters. It is nice to have all the information, tied in together and have it all in one place. But, as long as the information gets out there, as long as we learn about the games themselves, that's all that matters at the end of the day. But I don't know, man. I find it very interesting, especially I just, 25 minutes long. So there's going to be a lot of games there, but it's you could have just made a dank ass mainline Nintendo Direct, had 25 minutes of it be third party stuff, have 25 minutes of it be first party stuff. And then you got a 50-minute banger Direct with a ton of stuff. It's why is there no first party stuff here? Why? What's going on with the secretiveness? Where are my updates? Where are my release dates? When am I going to be playing some of these? I want Metroid Prime 4, damn it. I want Metroid Prime 4. So, I don't know. It'll be fun to see what tomorrow brings to the table. Of course, I will be covering it, making a video, sharing my thoughts about the games that are shown during that event. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel with the notifications turned on so you don't miss out on anything. But I want to hear what you guys have to say. Do you find it interesting that it's going to be a third-party Direct instead of a standard one? Or, is that what you wanted? Did you want a third-party Direct? I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to look at this, and I just find it curious, man. I find it curious. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. Like I said before, if you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.